napakadelikado po ang sitwasyon doon. Nandun na po yung mga nagtatalsikang mga debris galing sa mga IEDs na sumasabog. Nandun din po yung mga RPGs ng ating kalaban na itinitira sa aming lugar. Ganun din po yung mga nagliliparang mga bala.
You have to discern whether you have to go or not. There were many points during the campaign that we flew through marginal weather and marginal conditions.
The Philippine Air Force were able to showcase, that's what you call it, to showcase how air power can save the day for the nation.
The Marawi siege has been the first of its kind in the country. Decades-long advantage in jungle operations turned the table for the Philippine military as the ISIS-inspired Maute Group and Abu Sayyaf launched the attack on the city.
I think at that time, nobody can tell the extent of the conflict in Marawi. At first, of course, we were looking at, again, a purely law enforcement activity. But later on, when the air force was requested to provide support to the ground forces, we started to calibrate our plans.
So this is a military operation in urban terrain, the first of its kind apart from that in Zamboanga that we have encountered for a long time. The last one that we may have had apart from Zamboanga may have been in World War II already. So this is among the challenges that we faced because admittedly we were not totally prepared for an urban type of warfare.
Marawi is really fighting in an urban terrain, and they were able to plan their positions prior to their siege of Marawi. So they built tunnels, they identified vantage points, strategic vantage point, which proved to be very hard for the troops to on the ground to overcome.
Highly urbanized warfare has proven to be a bloody challenge to the military ground forces. The fighting wrought damage to the Islamic city of Marawi, but more than that, the death toll and the number of wounded was a cause for concern for the armed forces and national leaders. Realizing the need for more sophisticated equipment and force, the Air Force was ordered to enter the fray to provide the advantages of air power in the battlefield.
You have forces on the ground fighting land warfare. You have forces at sea fighting at sea, and they are the ones executing it from the Navy. But above the ground and above the sea is the air.
In any conflict, those that control the air has the great advantage in terms of the outcome of the conflict.
So air power is a unique capability that is sought after by any armed forces in the conduct of any conflict or in the conduct of any war, because with it can take control of events transpiring on land and transpiring at sea, and will control the outcome of any kind of conflict or battle.
Of course, we don't need roads. We can bypass enemy resistance in order to deliver men and material to where we need it. And of course, the delivery of precision airstrikes to eliminate enemy pockets of resistance such as snipers, something that is very difficult to do in an urban terrain.
Thus came the Air Force, dubbed as the game changer of the Marawi siege. The blue team flew a total of 4,950 flight hours in support of our ground troops directly operating in Marawi.
Noong nagsimula at pumutok itong kaguluhan sa Marawi, ang naging kontribusyon ng ating hukbong himpapawid ay ang mabilisang pagdala ng ating mga tropa upang agad-agarang makapag-reinforce o makatulong dun sa mga tropa nating nananatili at nakikipagbakbakan dun sa loob ng syudad.
Of course, we have various platforms like the medium lifts of the 220th Airlift Wing, as well as the Presidential Airlift Wing, the tactical lift of the 205th Tactical Helicopter Wing. We have the strike aircraft, both fixed wing and rotary wing.
The advantage of air power, which is lethality, sustainability, and timeliness, will always be there.
Employing various capabilities ranging from troop insertion to precision airstrikes, the Air Force played a significant contribution in the liberation of the besieged city.
This capability and capacity to transport not only men but also material, supplies, and others facilitated the conduct of the war. It sustained our efforts to face the enemy head-on in a fashion that was without any interruption.
Immediate reinforcement and resupply for the warring troops in Marawi were a major consideration in the overall operations. The 220th Airlift Wing, which is the primary transport wing of the AFP, made all efforts to provide for the needs of the Philippine Army.
Unang-una, pag nakita nila yung aeroplano natin nandun, alam nila na merong mga additional na troops na pupunta, merong mga equipment at mga supplies na kailangan nila para sa gerang yun.
Nung Marawi Flight Operations, na-realize ko na napakalaki pala ng impact ng airlift operations dito sa ating operasyon. Ang ating mga C-130 ay ang nagdala ng mga tropa at kanilang mga gamit katulad ng mga sasakyan, mga light armored vehicles, mga bala, mga granada para pang-suporta sa kanilang mga operasyon dito sa Marawi.
So sa part namin, tinitibayan na lang namin yung loob namin at lalo kaming na-inspire na pagbutihin yung pagbibigay ng agarang airlift services sa gera ng Marawi.
The battlefield proved to be a difficult and hazardous challenge to our ground soldiers. Enemy sniper fire and improvised explosive devices or IED left by the fleeing terrorists has left some of our troops wounded and even caused casualties to others. Immediate and accessible air transportation was therefore a critical component to sustain our operations.
The Air Force played a critical role in saving lives. So napakahalaga na naging parte ng ating hukbong himpapawid sa pagkakaroon at pagsagip sa buhay ng ating mga kasundaluhan. Yung mga nasusugatan nating mga kasamahan na tinamaan sa pakikipagdigma dito sa ating mga hinaharap na kalaban, mga terorista, marami sa kanila ay nagpapasalamat sa ating hukbong himpapawid dahil sa mabilisan at agarang paglikas nila sa lugar na kanilang pinanggagalingan sa bakbakan, sa mga ospital na tinutulong, sa mga first aid station na ating itinalaga dun sa likod ng bakbakan.
Our tactical lift, like the UH-1Hs and even at times the presidential helicopters, were used to evacuate, especially those who are wounded in action. So these had the effect of boosting the morale of our troops, especially since they know that even at night, because the Air Force has night capability, they can be evacuated whenever they're wounded.
The 205th Tactical Helicopter Wing, with a fleet of UH-1H helicopters, provided much-needed troop insertion and air evacuation services to the Army. Always there, these pilots airlifted 2,300 336 military and civilian passengers, over 1,166 hours of helilift operation. Even at night, operations are flown to ferry wounded and the KIAs to safe zones within the area of operation.
Malaki ang naitulong ng Philippine Air Force sa mga moral ng ground troops natin. Unang-una, lumakas ang loob nila mag-operate sa ground. Kasi alam nila, anytime na masugatan sila, may mangyari sa kanila, nandun kami. Ready kami para pick upin sila. May magdadala sa kanila sa ospital. Na hindi kami aayaw na kunin sila doon para lang maisalba yung buhay nila. So this ability to transport and evacuate our wounded save a lot of lives, and this is part
VIP mission in a tactical environment was flying in conditions and environment that we were not accustomed to. So, for example, we were flying at night in darkness, we were flying under enemy fire, we were flying in bad weather conditions, in thick clouds and rainy conditions, we were flying in over treacherous terrain. All of this combined to make it even more difficult that we have the president, no less than the president, on board us. So all of this combined was really a difficult job.
Ang daming problema, ang daming ayaw muna, wag muna ipasok si president. But eventually, we have to plan. This is our directive, we have to plan. So we took every effort to make a good plan of inserting our president sa Marawi. We actually went to a tactical mode from a VIP flying style to a tactical flying.
We were ferrying yung mga ambulant passengers, those who still can walk. And we made sure na dapat may mga provisions pangkabitan ng mga dextrose. No? So we had 3 personnel from the hospital who ably assist us with the flight operations namin. So unlike yung mga normal VIP flight, ito mas maraming preparations to make sure na comfortable and that the aircraft is ready to support the requirements of the passengers.
Days into the battle, the war zone became perilous even for the helicopters due to the enemy's capability to hit back from the ground with high-caliber weaponry. For the first time, the armed forces were forced to deploy the FA-50 Golden Eagles in what was dubbed as a baptism of fire for the newly minted pilots of the fighter wing. These birds dropped 316,000 pounds of lethal force, destroying enemy strongholds and allowing our troops to advance further into their territory.
One of the critical there is really the use of air power to pacify targets. So in the siege of Marawi, we liberated Marawi with a lot of firepower coming from the Air Force. And no less than the Chief of Staff, General Galvez, has acknowledged that the Air Force has done a lot and was a big part in the liberation of Marawi because of its precision airstrikes.
When we started deploying our air assets, we started out, of course, with the usual UH-1, UH-1H, the Agusta 109s. But then again, as the security situation in the city of Marawi becomes untenable, and our UWIs would be in a harm's way, so to speak, we have to bring in aircraft of higher capabilities. We have to bring in now the FA-50s.
Yung pinakamalaking challenge is how to deliver your bombs sa very marginal weather condition. Yung pangit ang kondisyon sa taas. Ngayon, kailangan mong hanapin ang target. So, nako-complicate lalo. Kaya dapat yung preparasyon mo matibay, mahaba, at determinado ka. Kasi kailangan mong i-deliver yung bomba na yon dahil kailangan mong suportahan ang mga tropa sa baba. So, napakahirap. Magdi-deliver ka ng bomba, you have to actually see it during the delivery in order for us pilots to adjust. Para ma-adjust namin yung pag-asinta namin dun sa tinatarget namin na area.
Yung pinag-aralan namin at yung training namin is nagamit namin sa actual na gera. So, ito na yung sinasabi namin na hindi na biro-biro yung talagang training na ginagawa namin. Kasi we considered everything, yung emergency situation, we considered din yung danger close kung paano namin siya mai-deliver ng maayos yung mga bomba na hindi naman makakatama doon sa mga kasamahan natin ng mga ground troops.
Prepositioned vantage points held by the terrorist snipers proved to be a challenge for the army. Streets have become kill zones and limited ground movement due to the relative proficiency of the enemies in sniper fire. To work around this, close air support was employed to soften enemy positions so that our ground troops can move forward.
When the troops got engaged in contact with the enemy, when they encountered enemy resistance such as those snipers, enemy emplacements, they used the close air support assets.
A single sniper in a high-rise building can practically stop a battalion of ground force on their tracks. And the only way that they can move forward is to eliminate this sniper. And it's not easy to eliminate a sniper.
So hindi makagalaw ang ating mga kasamahan na nakikipagdigmaan sa loob ng syudad, kaya't kinailangan natin ng angkop na firepower. So itong firepower na ito ay nagbumula sa artillery ng ating mga kasamahan sa army, pero malaking bahagi dyan ay yung mas malakas na mga kapasidad upang man-neutralize itong mga target na ito. At ito ay nanggaling sa ating mga kasamahan sa hukbong Himpapawid.
Air strikes and close air support provided by the 15th Strike Wing were effective in neutralizing enemy sniper positions. Precise and deadly, these pilots flew 1,910 sorties in Marawi, which substantially weakened the areas held by the enemies.
Actually, malaking pagkakait ng mga nangyari sa Marawi sa mga previous combat missions na participatean kasi this is the first time na urban setting yung naging battlefield natin. So previously, puro mga bundok, kapalayan, or kapatagan na walang masyadong mga bahay na mas madali mo ma-identify kung saan yung mga targets mo.
Napakalaki yung difference niya sa lahat ng mga naging combat missions ko. Mostly kasi is jungle warfare siya. Then biglang nalipat sa urban, which is yung targets natin mid-off yung thick concrete talaga na buhos, which is napakahirap na i-penetrate ng ating mga ammunitions. And yung mga tropa natin is within danger close. When we say danger close, dikit-dikit magkakalapit lang sila dun sa target natin.
hindi ko ni-expect na ganun ka lakas yung kalaban, yung mga high caliber weapons nila. Bumabaril din pabalik sa amin. Nakikita namin talaga siya na kumikislap sa ilalim. Dati kung medyo shallow yung dive namin, since ngayon kailangan i-precise. So we need to, kailangan namin steeper ang dive and as low as possible para doon talaga mismo pupunta yung boat.
Vast array of buildings and the probability of friendly fire in urban operations is a concern for pilots and ground troops. To ensure that airstrikes reach their intended targets, the PAF forward air controllers were deployed in the battlefield to assist the pilots in determining accurately the enemy locations.
Bilang PPAC po, ang nagiging trabaho namin sa area, tumutulong po kami sa ating mga piloto upang direkta nilang tamaan o accurate nilang tatamaan yung kanilang target na pinapatira ng ating mga ground units. Sumasama po kami sa ground units, ganun din po sa mismong front line ng labanan para ma-estimate po namin kung ang mga bomba-bomba na pakakawalan ng ating eroplano ay magiging accurate.
Na-experience namin doon na habang nagko-control kami ng aircraft, nagpapabagsak, yung maramdaman mo yung kaliwat kanan, may humahaging na bala, diretso pa rin kasi ito naman yung talagang trabaho namin. Pumunta sa front line, nakahanda naman ako kung malasing ka, nakahanda.
Buildings held by the enemy were destroyed and snipers were neutralized, freeing the streets for ground mobility. However, the sheer power of air strikes left the city in rubbles and has left some questioning its necessity.
Madali sabihin na marami naman kayo, bakit airstrike pa? Again, they have the command of the terrain, nasa taas sila. They see you on the ground. Ang mga officers naman natin, especially the ground forces, also value the lives of our soldiers. You just can't rush to a building just like in the movies and neutralize the sniper there.
Sa atin, napakaliwanag na mas importante ang buhay. Ang buhay ay hindi maaaring palitan. Pag nabawi ang buhay, wala na po. Wala na po, hindi na po maibabalik ang buhay ng isang tao. Pero ang anumang struktura, ang anumang mga kagamitan na maaring masira dahil sa ating paglusob sa isang lugar ay maaring palitan.
Nasa gera tayo expect natin na may masisirang mga struktura. Kapag hindi natin pinalambot yung mga struktura, mauubusan tayo ng tropa.
There's no other weapon that can perhaps neutralize them more effectively. And we'd like to point out that the airstrikes that were performed were not indiscriminate bombing. So these were precise.
A protector of Philippine skies, the Air Force has become a shining beacon in times of death, giver of hope in period of despair, and vessel of grace in moments of victory.
Bilang isang airlifter na fulfill ko yung role ko and masaya ako sa naging bahagi ko dito sa pag-liberate ng Marawi.
Nasabi ko, ito yung work ko Ito yung pinili kong work. Masaya ako sa work na to and masaya ako na nakakatulong ako.
Kahit gaano man kahirap yung pag-perform namin ng mission, andun pa rin yung iniisip namin na we have to do this and failure is not an option.
Ayaw natin na maranasan pa ng mga susunod na henerasyon ang ganitong sitwasyon.
And in so many conflicts in the history of Philippine warfare, the Philippine Air Force has done a great part in making sure that the sovereignty of the country is always upheld.
When the freedom of its country is threatened by extremist ideals, when the way of life of ordinary people are endangered by the menace of evil, remarkable men and women of courage, gallantry, and dedication to service rises up to fulfill their duty to the land.
Behind these stories and figures are stories of gallantry, bravery, boldness, daring, and sacrifice. Some of our novel stories will be written and retold. Some will be heard, and some will even fall into oblivion. But the powerful image being etched in the minds of our people is this aircraft that dominated the air.
We are the blue team of the Philippine skies, flying top speed to defend our land. We are your Philippine Air Force.